security officer there and alright guys, that's all. Into a home for the criminals and individuals with mental illnesses. But it closed its 100 people died there. Hundreds are currently buried all over the property in unmarked graves, which makes this doors slamming. Others have seen the apparition of Roy Cruz, a 7.5-foot tall man who died there in 1942. And the hospital even has something known as a shadow hallway. Hallway where you can see tons of ghostly apparitions. In Kansas, operated from 1872 to 1997. And this hospital, much like the others on this list, has quite a dark history. So apparently in the early 20th century, a reporter visited the facility and witnessed some terrifying things. But a majority of them just sat in the hallways on a rocking chair, rocking back and forth, staring at the walls all day. That's something straight out of a horror film. And our next spot, we have the Trans Avenue Lunatic Asylum. The Trans Avenue Lunatic Asylum began operating in 1964 and was designed to only hold 250 patients. However, it was soon housing more than 2,400 patients, which was very problematic. The place was extremely overcrowded and patients started to become more and more violent. Soon they were starting fires and attacking the staff. In 1994, the asylum was forced to close due to a lot of violations. Now it says the building is haunted from the souls of the mistreated patients. In fact, the building is open to ghost tours if you want to go do some exploring. In our seventh spot, we have the Metropolitan State Hospital. Located in Massachusetts, this hospital opened in 1930 for patients with mental illnesses. But in 1980, something sinister happened that gave the hospital the nickname the Hospital of Seven Teeth. So back in 1978, a patient named Anna Marie Davy went out for a walk on the grounds, but she never returned. In 1980, the patient Melvin Wilson came forward saying that he had killed her and buried her all around the grounds. Not only that, he kept 7 of her teeth as souvenirs. Hence the nickname, the Hospital of Seven Teeth. But that's not the only bad thing to happen there. Years before this incident, in the 1960s, a bunch of patients were accidentally poisoned, but this has never been confirmed. In 1992, the hospital was closed after psychiatric care in Massachusetts became more privatized. In our sixth spot, we have Rancho Los Amigos. In 1888, Rancho Los Amigos, located close to downtown LA, was originally created to assist people living in poverty. Over time, the hospital expanded and was home to the elderly, homeless, and individuals with disabilities. But over the years, it ended up changing to become mainly a mental hospital. The hospital was in full operation until the 1950s, when it started to shut down its wards, including the mental hospital. That's when they discovered the hospital had a more dark past. In 2006, after the hospital was abandoned, a freezer was discovered in the morgue. Inside of it were mummified, amputated limbs, and brain tissue samples. Guess they didn't want to take that with them. But this makes me wonder what really went down in this hospital. The original building is now abandoned, but it has moved to another location and is now called Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center. We are now at our fifth and halfway mark with Creedmoor Psychiatric Hospital. Back in 1912, this hospital opened up in Queens, New York for individuals that were said to be mentally ill. Most of the patients had psychosis or schizophrenia. It started off as a small institution with only 32 patients. But in 1959, it had more than 7,000 patients. As a result, the hospital was very crowded and understaffed. Shortly after, the asylum was closed and left to rot. This next abandoned hospital is named one of the most haunted places in South Korea, and one of the freakiest places in the world. In fact, it's home to tons of urban legends. One legend states that the owner of the hospital was insane and kept the patients as his prisoners. Another version of the legend states that patients at the hospital started dying mysteriously, and that's what forced the hospital to close. In reality, the hospital closed closed in the 90s due to unsanitary conditions and lack of funding. Apparently because of this, the owner left the country, leaving no documentation behind about this building, so it was just abandoned. But to this day, people are convinced that the hospital is haunted. In fact, thousands of people break into the hospitals each year just for the chance to catch a ghost. In our third spot, we have the Zelda Fitzgerald Sanatorium. Built in 1859, this sanatorium, once called Tiorana, was originally built for the Civil War officer General Joseph Howland. Then in 1915, it was converted into a psychiatric hospital. In 1934, novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald took his wife Zelda there with hopes to cure her schizophrenia. Hence why people now refer to it as Zelda Fitzgerald Sanatorium. However, it is probably most known for housing the patient Frances Seymour, aka actress Jane Fonda's mother. Frances ended up taking her own life there in 1999. The hospital closed, and of course, is now said to be haunted. In our second spot, we have Athens Lunatic Asylum. Yes, that's the actual name of this asylum. Located in Athens, Ohio, the asylum was built in 1854 for patients with tuberculosis. However, over the years, it became way too overcrowded and understaffed. As a result, patients were being mistreated. Over the years, the hospital turned into a place for the mentally ill. This is when the man, Dr. Walter Jackson, comes into play. Dr. Jackson loved transorbital lobotomies. He believed that it could cure all mental illnesses. So at the hospital, he performed 200 lobotomies. I'm telling you right now that many did not go so well. But that's not the only freaky thing happening here. A patient known as Margaret Schilling went missing while in the ward. A month later, her body was found locked in a room in an abandoned section of a ward. In fact, her decaying body left a nasty stain on the ward's floor that can still be seen today. And in our number one spot, we have Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Located in Kentucky, this hospital was originally built in 1910 as a hospital for patients with tuberculosis. Sadly, tons of patients ended up dying from the disease. The hospital did more harm than good. Rumor goes that the hospital was mistreating their patients and conducting experiments on them. In fact, they had an area in the hospital called the death tunnel or body chute, where they would dump the deceased. Another nurse died from falling out of the window. The hospital closed in 1961 upon the discovery of an antibiotic that could treat and cure tuberculosis. As a result, there was no need for the hospital. Now it's said that it's an extremely haunted building. Apparently, people have seen tons of apparitions there. The most famous one being of a boy named Timmy, who likes to play with the knife. A fire burnt a large section of the prison. Firefighters didn't even care at all. They didn't try to even attempt to extinguish the fire. Now what remains of the prison is badly vandalized, and pictures of the inside show that it's not the safest place to visit. In our 8th spot, we have Enchanted Prison. Her Majesty's Prison Pentridge, or HM Prison Pentridge, was an Australian prison established in 1851. Now, the problem with this prison was that it was meant to hold 650 prisoners and only 100 guards. But soon the prison became overcrowded with thousands of prisoners. In fact, a large percentage of the prison population died inside the prison. This was due to monthly stabbings, bludgeonings, and bashings. The prison closed on May 1st, 1997 due to a bunch of riots and scandals. But because so many people died there, they actually had to bury them on the prison's ground. Over the years, bones of the prisoners have been found in and around the prison. Coming in at number 7, we have Moundsville Prison. Moundsville was small, but eventually overcrowding became an issue, and up to 3 inmates were placed in one cell. 2 were on super small bunk beds, while the others slept on a mattress on the floor by the toilet. The conditions weren't the best. that's for sure. Before the prison was abandoned in 1995, a lot of death sentences were carried out there. This prison saw the worst of the worst criminals. One of the more notable inmates was Harry Powers, the Lonely Hearts Killer. He would use newspaper ads to lure lonely women to him, with ads saying that he was looking for love and marriage, but instead he would rob and kiss them. Now, Tom Stiles, the caretaker of the penitentiary, said that multiple inmates would complain about the prison being haunted. So even before criminals were killed there, the prison was already haunted by other spirits. Now it's even more haunted with the ghosts of the criminals as well. Making our way down the list to number 6, we have Old Essex County Jail. Located in New Jersey, this jail was built in 1937 and has a very creepy Victorian style to it. Over the time, the prison expanded and had its own cafeteria, hospital, auditorium, and gallows in the yard. The prison closed in 1970 and now is deemed very unsafe to trespassers. Some of the floors are at risk for caving in at any second. Plus, the walls are now covered in creepy vandalism and graffiti. And inmates' files are now scattered all over the floor of the auditorium, along with empty tear gas containers and shotgun shells. So what really went on in that prison? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Wyoming Territorial Prison. Built in 1872, this prison is one of the oldest buildings in Wyoming. From 1872 to 1890, it was a federal penitentiary, and from 1890 to 1901, it was a state prison. But this prison faced a lot of issues. The first one being that there were a lot of jailbreaks. Within the first 2 years of operation, out of the 44 prisoners there, 11 of them managed to escape. Then over the course of the next couple of years, they struggled with overcrowding. They also had to deal with a number of ghost fires. Yeah, fires would start out of nowhere in the prison. Over the years, the prison was used less and less, and actually was under capacity. At one point, they only had 3 prisoners. Now, the prison was famous for housing the murderer Julius Greenwald, who is said to haunt the area. In fact, he was known for being really good at rolling cigars. And if you visit the prison today, the faint smell of his cigar smoke will follow you around. Moving on at number 4, we have the Garcia Moreno Prison. Located in Ecuador, this abandoned prison is nightmare fuel. Inside of the prison, there are a bunch of haunting images that the inmates left behind. So to pass time, they would make murals or sketches on the walls. Most of them are pretty dark and gruesome, showcasing their misery from being locked up. So originally, this prison was built to only hold 300 inmates. But it reached 8 times its capacity, squeezing inmates inside. They weren't living in the best conditions, and by taking a tour of the area, you can see it for yourself firsthand, if you dare. I don't recommend it. In our 3rd spot, we have Alcatraz. Of course, this is probably one of the most famous prisons in the world. Alcatraz was a maximum security federal prison built from 1910 to 1912. It first served as a prison for military prisoners, but over the years, it was known to be home of the biggest and baddest criminals. It was also known as being an inescapable prison, but the prison closed in 1963 since it was getting too costly to run. Now it's rumored to be very haunted. Apparently, prisoners were often tortured there. Lots of prisoners actually died while locked up there. Legend goes that if you visit the prison, you'll be able to hear the sounds of endless weeping and screams. Others have reported hearing music coming from one of the cells, and even got locked in a cell by a trickster ghost. So yeah, definitely do not recommend you visit this prison unless you want to end up behind bars. Literally. Coming in at number 2, we have Port Arthur Prison. Built in 1833, Port Arthur Prison was referred to as Australia's Alcatraz. It was deemed inescapable, and it was known to house only the biggest and baddest criminals. From 1833 to 1853, Port Arthur was a place for convicted British criminals. Rumor has it that these prisoners were psychologically tortured there. It operated under the principle of isolation, silence, and control. As a result, a lot of prisoners were driven mad in solitary confinement. The prison was shut down in 1877, and then in 1895 and 1897, devastating fires destroyed some of the prison. Here's the thing, the prison and the entire land is said to be cursed. In 1997, a man named Martin Bryant killed people and wounded 23 more on the land. This massacre is considered the worst massacre in the modern history of Australia. As a result, the prison and the surrounding area is pretty much abandoned. And in our number one spot, we have Holmesburg Prison. The Holmesburg Prison opened in 1896 and was nicknamed the Terror Dome, and you'll understand why shortly. Tons of very horrific incidents occurred at this prison. From 1938, half of the prisoners went on a hunger strike because of complaints about the food. As punishment, the leaders of the strike were taken to a building that had several cells lined with radiators and steam pipes. Others suffered from horrific burns. But that's not all. One of the prison doctors would conduct unethical experiments on the prisoners. Then in 1970, a riot took place in the prison. Then in 1973, the prison's warden and the deputy were stabbed to death by the inmates. Finally, the prison closed in 1995, and due to its horrific past, no one wants to visit there.
Starting us off at number 10 is Six Flags New Orleans. Now this was the one coming up the most in all my searches, so I thought it was only fitting that we started with this one. Now this 140-acre park originally opened its doors in 2000 as Jazzland, but was released by Six Flags from 2002 till 2009, and that's when its name was changed. However, tragedy struck in the morning of August 29th, 2005, when Hurricane Katrina water flooded into the park and the drainage pipes just couldn't keep up. After all was said and done, the park was under 20 feet of water and it took more than a month to drain. How screwed up is that? Due to the major wind and water damage, the park was closed indefinitely, and I don't think you guys realize how bad it actually was. 80% of the buildings were demolished, every single flat ride was destroyed, and the one ride that kind of survived was the Batman the Ride roller coaster. The company didn't want to rebuild the park since it was their least profitable one anyway, and tried to leave their 75-year lease, but the mayor was like, nah, you have to rebuild. Either way, the park's donezo. Coming in at number 9 is Auto World. Located in Flint, Michigan, Auto World was an indoor theme park that started its operation back in 1984. The plan was to try and get tourists to come to Flint, and at its grand opening, the governor even said it would trigger the rebirth of the great city of Flint. It took 2 decades of planning, and it opened with a huge parade and a lot of media attention. It was predicted that it would bring in 1 million guests a year, but by the fall of that year, the numbers were already going down. The attractions included a replica of historic downtown Flint, a cabin with mannequin Jacob Smith inside of it, a Ferris wheel, a carousel, a historical carnival ride, and more. By December of that year, it was announced it'd only be open during weekends, and by January, they'd closed it down completely. Yes, the park opened for brief periods over the next few years, but by 1990, it was permanently closed. Damn, what a rough go. Didn't even last 1 proper year being open full time. Yikes. At number 8, we have Six Flags Astroworld. Am I the only one that thought Six Flags made some deal with Travis Scott and it was going to be somehow related to him? Opened in 1968, Astroworld was a seasonal park located in Houston, and it was actually meant to be part of Astrodome initially, but was sold to Six Flags in 1975. The park had 10 themed areas, and its water park sister Waterworld became part of it in 2002. There was a 610 limited train, Alpine Valley, and Oriental Village. I just hate the word Oriental to describe things in the West. Like, I know for a fact by Oriental Village, they mean an East Asian inspired theme, and Oriental just feels like they're trying to other you, and I just don't like it. Anywho, rant over. Anyway, on the 12th of September 2005, it was announced that Astroworld would be closing and getting demolished. Despite wanting to sell it for $150 million, they ended up selling it for $77 million, which is a shocking loss. Filling on the 7th slot is Six Flags Dubai. Again, another knife to the heart with this one. First Dubai land, and now this. Now, the planned theme park was in the works for years, and it was initially meant to open way back in November of 2011. Then, due to a failed payment, the contract was terminated, but then revived and scheduled to open in 2019. And it was going to be colossal, taking up 5 million square feet. It had 27 rides, with rides themed after other Six Flags locations like Magic Mountain from the California location, Metropolitan, etc. The construction of the park stopped in 2018 since Dubai already has 3 other huge parks, Legoland Dubai, Motion Gate Dubai, and Bollywood Park, and none of those were pulling in the numbers they wanted, so the shareholders were like, maybe this isn't in our best interest, and just ditched the project. Now at number 6 is Wyandotte Lake. This park had humble beginnings and kind of like started from the bottom now here. Operating as a picnic and recreational park way back in 1896. In the 40s, it was changed into winter storage for carnival rides, but slowly but surely, they started adding rides like the Jet Flyer. In 1995, Premier Parks bought the property and they decided to keep the park's name and continue operating. Fun fact, basically, Premier Parks was what Six Flags was called before, obviously, they changed the name and acquired the Six Flags company. By 2006, Six Flags revealed they had been losing money from the park every year since 1999, and that they were going to sell it to Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. The latter invested something like $45 million to redevelop the whole place, whereas Six Flags was like, I'm not doing that. Nope. Coming in at number 5 is Six Flags Atlantis. I used to hate water parks as a kid since I couldn't go with my glasses, and because I didn't wear contacts back then, I just could not and it just pissed me off. Anyway, as you could have guessed, Six Flags Atlantis was a water park in Hollywood that opened up back in 1979. Well, initially it was a private venture called Atlantis the Water Kingdom, but they didn't have enough money to finish it, so Six Flags was like, here we are, sell it to us. The water park included a lake with water ski shows, a wave pool, 7-story slide tower, and more. Unfortunately, due to another hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, the park was hugely damaged in 1992 and it was closed and auctioned off. Nowadays, there's a cool plaza that takes up the space. There's now a Kmart instead of a wave pool, so I mean, a downgrade for sure, but I mean, times are tough, you guys. And number 4 is Six Flags Power Plant, which sounds like the shit theme park ever. Like, how is that name appealing at all? Hey guys, you want to have fun at the power plant? I know that has no ring to it. Located inside the Inner Harbor district of Baltimore, Six Flags acquired the property in 1985 and tried to turn it into an indoor theme park. This was their chance at making basically Auto World 2.0, and it was actually more successful than its predecessor, but it also closed down very quickly and transformed into a Hard Rock Cafe, then a Gold's Gym, a Barnes & Noble, and so on. Filling out a 3-star is Warner Bros. Movie World Germany. So this park started off as a family-owned thing back in 1967 and was sold to numerous different people throughout the years. In 1994, Warner Bros. Bought it and started building what was Warner Bros. Movie World Germany and had a grand opening 2 years later. It had a bunch of attractions and rides and was split into 7 different areas. There was the Hollywood Street Fair, which showed Area 51, the Lost Temple, and Looney Tunes 4D. There was a Streets of New York thing, Nick Clown, Santa Monica Pier, the Old West, and so on. By the end of 1999, they had sold the different parks, including, again, what Six Flags used to be called, but the other attractions that came in
we're first
very unpopular. Zombies stopped coming, and so even adrenaline junkies stopped coming, and that's when you know it's bad, when the bigs stopped coming. Eventually, they sold it to Star Parks, and they opened it as Movie Park Germany, which is what it still currently is. Now, number 2 is Six Flags World of Adventure. Initially opening at Geauga Lake in 1887, this recreation area was bought by Premier Parks in 1995 and renamed to Six Flags Ohio. Then with the acquisition of SeaWorld Ohio, the 2 parks became Six Flags World of Adventure, and I don't think I could go into how problematic and bad SeaWorld is. You guys know, you've seen the documentaries on fish, I don't have to tell you. But the park got 20 additional new rides, including Roadrunner Express, Villain, Batman, Night Flight, etc. They wanted to add like SeaWorld as well, but by combining the parks, SeaWorld created the biggest theme park in the world at that time. The SeaWorld side staged a wildlife area featuring marine shows, well, not really shows, more like exploitation and entrapment and depression and not choosing the animals right, but anywho. They then expanded that side further by adding Hurricane Mountain, which was the largest water slide in North America, which is ridiculous. Sadly, by 2004, they were facing high debt and sold the park to Cedar Fair to close down the park in September of 2007, and good riddance to those. And finally, number 1 is Wild Waves and Enchanted Village. And the park has a super long history as well, so it opened up as the Enchanted Village back in 1977 and was hugely popular in the summer in the Washington area. It had around 6 rides and took up 12 acres, but in 1984 the Wild Waves Water Park was built right residents just hated, so they were like, okay, let's move to this. In 2007, they sold the park to CNL Income Properties, and it's a good thing they did too, because in 2016, there was a drowning incident and the activity boom. Starting us off at number 10 is Dawson, New Mexico. If any of the ghost towns on this list have a tragic past, it is definitely Dawson. The mining town was bought by the Phelps Dodge Corporation back in 1906, and they're the ones who really built up the town, putting in homes, facilities like hospitals, stores, a cinema, even a golf course. The city had 10 mines, and the place was booming with a population of 9,000 until disaster struck not once, but twice. In 1913, Canyon Mine number 2 was shaken by an explosion in a neighboring town, and out of the 286 men set up to work that day, only 23 survived. Then, 10 years later, Canyon number 1 had a mine car that derailed into twinners, and the electric trolley cable sparked, igniting the coal dust. The majority of the 123 men that died that day were children of men from the previous disaster. Part of the city's population moved after each explosion, and the demand for coal also declined quite quickly. By 1950, the last mine in Dawson was closed, and the whole area was sold and the structures demolished. The town was just kind of left to rot. What's especially creepy about it, though, is the 400 white crosses in Dawson Cemetery that symbolize the miners who died. And I did not know it was an abandoned city, just going there and seeing that. Coming in at number 9 is Ruby, Arizona. This mining campsite operating in the year 1877, and it was quite rich in things like silver, gold, copper, lead, and zinc. Apparently, the first US post office was in Ruby, which is kind of like a TV strand of information. What's not cute, though, are 3 double homicides that took place, aka the Ruby murders. What a plot twist, no one saw that coming. In February of 1920, the 2 owners of the Ruby Mercantile were shot and killed during a robbery. According to the locals and eyewitnesses, the perpetrators were Manuel Garcia and Ezekiel Lara. It was quite easy to identify them since they were the only 2 unknown Mexicans seen in Ruby at the time. Then in August of the next year, the shop's new owners, the Pearsons, were robbed by the same group. Yet their 3 daughters were somehow spared. The largest manhunt in the Southwest was still underway for these people, and a year later in July, they struck again. 2 men of the gang were identified and arrested, and as they were being transported in a police car, the prisoners managed to get free and killed both of the attending officers. Despite all that, the late 20s were actually the peak of prosperity for Ruby. In the 30s, the mine was the leading zinc and lead producer in the state, but by 1940, the mine was closed down. A year later, the whole city was abandoned, but it's been kept pretty well preserved, I must say. At number 8, we have Bodie, California. Located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, Bodie struck gold in 1859, literally, but the hype around the town started actually growing after the Standard Company took things over in 1876. Within 3 years, the population had risen to about 7,000 to 10,000 people, and there were like 2,000 buildings in the city. But by the end of the 1870s, came with a savage winter which killed hundreds of people due to heat and exposure. Explosions and accidents in the mine also added to the death toll. The potential of the city brought in gamblers, miners, and other corrupt businessmen. And for that reason, the town's reputation started going down. Violence was at an all-time high. Someone would get killed or robbed every day, and street fights were a daily occurrence. By 1881, it was described by Reverend F.M. Warrington as a sea of sin and lashed by the tempests of lust and passion, which sounds like the Las Vegas of our time. By 1912, the city started declining as mining profits decreased as well. Within a few years, the newspaper, railway, and lost mine had been closed down. By 1915, it was a ghost town, and it was actually named a National Historic Landmark in 1961. Filling on the 7th slot is Mystic, South Dakota. And honestly, I low-key just picked this one because of its name and that it reminds me of Mystic Falls from the Vampire Diaries. So Mystic is one of the many ghost towns located in the Black Hills mountain range, and Native Americans have quite an extended history with the area. It was actually called Sitting Bull before it was called Mystic. The city wasn't even really a city. It started off as a creekside camp in 1876 and somehow survived a really long time. Mystic's post office was built by 1885. 4 years later, it had a railway line, and a second one by 1906. The town started importing coal into the hills and exporting gold out of them. And the journey definitely wasn't easy. A bunch of floods happened, destroying a lot of their bridges and railway lines. The Great Depression screwed them royally. Their sawmill burned down, but they just kept bouncing back, and we like that never give up energy. I don't have it, but I like this. By the end of the Second World War, everything was going and the mill was too expensive to operate, and then people stopped traveling there. The sawmill was closed, and so was everything else, and finally the whole population was just gone. Now, number 6 is Raya Lights, Nevada, located right near the eastern part of the Death Valley National Park, this town got started in 1905 as multiple mining camps just sprung up out of nowhere. It was the gold rush, so people were migrating to Waverly left, right, and center. The city had a lot to offer. It had resident hotels, an opera house and symphony, a hospital, a stock exchange. The most appealing of all is the infamous Red and White District. Girls from San Francisco get employed by the shops there, which is kind of like a delicacy, if you will. At its peak, the town had about 3,500 to 5,000 people, but it went down as quickly as it went up. The earthquake of 1906 and financial panic of the next year made money scarce, and the mine stock values started crashing. They started closing down, which meant miners were also moving out of the town, and by 1920, the place was a ghost town. Coming in at number 5 is Kalapana, Hawaii. This town is part of the Puna district of Hawaii, and fun fact, it was home to the infamous Star of the Sea Painted Church. Hawaii literally has 15 out of the 129 that are part of the Hawaiian Emperor's Sea chain. In 1990, lava from the vent of Kilauea destroyed most of the town and its houses. Over 100
Off through the cold, feels kind of offensive. New Buckley's dry cough, extra strength.
Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your entire city has been abandoned. The streets are deserted, but houses are still completely furnished, and grocery stores are left full of stock. It's as if the residents just suddenly disappeared. That would be pretty scary, but honestly, that's how most ghost towns are, which is why they're often regarded as being creepy or haunted. Hey everyone, what's up, Monster Most Maybe Top 10? I'm your host, Lindsay Ivan, and today I'm bringing you the top 10 abandoned cities you should visit. Now here's the thing, I say you should visit them, so I know a bunch of people are going to be like, what did she say? Oh, she wants us to visit them? Okay, so if you do, go ahead, just go at your own risk. Also, I know that there's a bunch of names that I'm going to mispronounce here, so if I do, please cut me some slack. Starting off this countdown, we have St. Elmo. St. Elmo, originally known as Forest City, was once a very popular mining town in Colorado. They had about 2,000 people living there when the mines opened. However, in the early 1920s, the mining industry started to decline, and slowly people packed up and left. However, it's not completely abandoned. Apparently, a couple of people still live there, but it's said that this place is haunted. In fact, it's said that it is home to some of the most paranormal activity in the state. Maybe it's a good spot for paranormal investigators, but not the best area to live in. I mean, I wouldn't want ghosts for neighbors. I mean, maybe I would, if they were friendly ghosts that kept noise levels down, then sure. Moving on at number 9, we have Krakow, Italy. Krakow, Italy was founded in the 8th century. However, it now lays abandoned due to a series of destructive natural disasters. The first natural disaster occurred in 1963 when a bunch of landslides affected the area. This was a result of the city being built on a
cleaning up, then I guess we can do the like whatever.
Like 1,300 feet off the ground, and they also had some sewer and water system issues. Then in 1972, a flood struck the area and made the whole situation worse. Then in 1980, there was an earthquake that left the city completely abandoned. Now, the only people who they kept there are film crews. It's a very popular filming location. Some scenes in the film Quantum of Solace were shot there. But the area itself is considered a ticking time bomb. And it's surrounded by a lost city. Making our way down to list number 8, we have the city underwater. You aren't going to be able to visit this next city unless you have access to scuba diving gear, because this city is now completely submerged underwater. Built 1,300 years ago, the city I'm referring to is Chai-Chang, also referred to as Lion City, and it's located in eastern China. In 1959, the city was purposely flooded to build a hydroelectric power station. Now it's referred to as China's Atlantis. Bob's right commented, she is nothing less than a queen.
Howdy for. Long, good heart. Hey. Gee. I don't hear you. Marco, I hear you. Not the bunny. Like your controller ornament.
Go fuck yourself.
Gee. Quiet pants.
Asshole.
Pants wife.
Go fuck your brother.
Get up, sit.
Make me.
Did Uncle Popeyes come carry you up there?
Go fuck yourself, bitch.
Smart pants. Get in that armpits. Get into those armpits. Yeah. That cold hands. Ay. It's freezing out there. Shit.
Yes, so.
Shit.
Are you fucking whining?
Yeah, go right to your bike out there. It's freezing out there.
Yes, so.
Smart pants.
You're a bitch.
Gee.
You're a bitch. Give me a blowjob.
Gee.
What, you will? Holy shit. Holy fuck.
Hey, Michael, I hear you.
What's he doing fucking do about it?
Gee.
Oh, fuck.
Gee. Wait a minute, Smart pants.
Oh my god. Oh my
Wait a
god.
minute.
Oh,
Wait a minute. Smart pants.
oh my fucking god.
Gee.
Oh Christ. That's it. That's it. Yes. Oh my god. Oh my fucking god.
Chris will hear you too. I think it's my pants. It closes. Oh, you're right there. Hey. There.
Oh Christ. Oh my fucking god.
Chris will hear you.
Yes, so.
Mark too.
Yes, so.
And Laura.
Yes, so.
Well, that's only when they come out in the hallway though. Smart pants.
Yes, so. What are you to do about it?
Stay put. Like he's moving on to sit down. Gee, stay put. Gee. On my big thumbnail? Yes. Hey. Gee. Gee. Yeah, they still haven't changed that version to that new console yet.
Yes, so.
Rocket League.
Yes, so. Yeah.
Are you not playing Apex? The action games? No?